Hello, welcome back to Man Matters podcast with Nate and myself, Dervin. Then we have a guest, Stina.
Yes, hello.
Yes, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, my name is Stine. I grew up in Denmark and I now live here in the US in Colorado with my husband. I've lived here for 10 years now. I work as a personal trainer and nutrition coach here near where we live at a gym called Pursuit. And then I also do online training programs and nutrition coaching. And my background is I did gymnastics my whole life growing up, and then I have a bachelor's in exercise science, and then I've done certifications to become a nutrition coach on top of that. I also have about 10 years of experience in the CrossFit world, competing at almost the highest level. Didn't quite make it there, but almost. And now I sort of just exercise for health and longevity and try to manage everything in terms of fitting everything in with being a busy mom and working and everything. So yeah, that's it.
Very
Sounds like
cool.
pretty busy right there.
Yes, that's it's busy, but it's good. All good stuff. Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. I didn't realize you had the CrossFit experience. I mean, I can only imagine that must kind of force you to develop your nutritional and your recovery knowledge. I imagine
Yeah.
that can beat your body down pretty hard.
Yeah, for sure. And that's actually what made me get into nutrition, because that was back in like 2016, where some people had kind of started talking about tracking macros, but there was no real guidance on like what was appropriate for like especially really high activity level like I was doing. So I was like, where can I just find like what should my numbers be? So I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and do this course. So I did the precision nutrition level 1, mainly just to figure out how I should be eating for the demands from CrossFit and me wanting to like get better and get to a higher level. And then I just slowly started helping my friends in the gym too. And then kind of just slowly turned it into a small business and started charging a little bit of money to do it. And that way just got more and more experience, both from my own and from helping others. So that's kind of what got me into it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So, how often a week were you training that you were really having to consider all this?
I was training 6 days a week back then and
Okay.
just taking Sundays off. And then in multiple sessions too. I usually had like an hour-long track session at least 3 or 4 times a week. Other days it would be other forms of cardio that kind of had a session alone, and then more CrossFit specific stuff later in the day. And then at one point in time, my coach had me do like an hour sauna every day too. So
Wow.
it was like a whole, it was like a full-time job, I would say, but I learned a ton from it, and it was a really fun thing to pursue just because we had no kids back then. So like
Mhm.
I had the time to really dive into it
Mhm.
and just go all in and see where it would take me.
That's so
That's what the
cool.
thing of it. CrossFit is also like not just like a specialized sport because you have different dimensions you have to practice. It's just specialized too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so time consuming because you have to practice so many different elements. So yeah, it is just, which is also why after having kids, I kind of tried a little bit again. I had entered the master's division. So I was like, maybe I should give it a try here, but just the time commitment that it is, for me, it didn't seem like, it didn't make sense now, like after having kids, spending so much time on that. Because unless you are at like the very, very top, it just costs money. There's no, you don't gain much financially in that way. So it's just a very big investment in that way.
Yeah. I remember somebody that was on the Miranda. Do you remember her? She's a CrossFit back
Yeah.
in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
she's the same way. She started doing like, she has her own workouts as well too. She kind of had the same approach. She was like high level. Then after she had kids, she started her own approach, different than
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think her turn, like from what I understand, was like how do we do this more efficiently with like minimal time? And then they kind of developed the street parking that way, where it's like workouts that you can do at home and you don't have to spend hours on end at the gym to be fit and healthy. And that's kind of what I learned too, having kids. Like, and then for us at the same time, COVID happened, so the gym shut down. So we started investing in our home gym, and just then you realize, oh my gosh, this is so much more effective. My baby can be right here, and I can just get my workout done. And you realize, yeah, just maybe 30 minutes every day is actually plenty if you're just staying consistent with it. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I imagine that's, I don't have kids, but I imagine that's a struggle for a lot of people, is getting back into the routine after having kids.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember thinking it was pretty hard working out while I was pregnant. And then I was like, man, it's even harder after, because you have to try to fit it in either when you can like activate your kid doing something else, or try to do it during nap time. But there's a million other things you want to do during nap time as well. I did also for a period of time go back to CrossFit, where I brought both kids along, and that just also seemed like a lot, to pack up everybody and all the snacks and everything to go just do like a short workout. So yeah, but I mean, you figure out what works for you in the end.
Yeah, I can imagine timing, because just like I said, like for CrossFit, you have different things that you have to. I really had to pack for and get ready for, and then you have to like time specific for your kids. You have to like put in nap time, feeding, thing, all the things, and then you have to also like all the things other than your kids. They have laundry and shorts, things that you have to do around groceries and
I
working.
know, yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot. Adds
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and then I think a lot of times then exercise just like falls like down the list of priorities, right? Unless you get into a good routine where it's like doable and you can sustain it.
When you say that's what the reason why nutrition takes a backseat too, because that's people like exercise takes a backseat, but then nutrition, because you don't have enough time to cook and stuff like that. Then like, well, I just get a quick meal, go to a drive-through and get something quick. It's not as nutrition is good for you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think so. But I also think it's maybe a misunderstanding. The same with training. It kind of takes a backseat, maybe because you think it has to look a certain way on it, or it has to be a certain duration, or it doesn't count. Instead of just doing what you can a little bit every day is better than putting 1 hour in every 10th day or whatever. And the same with nutrition. I think then, okay, if I can't do it 100% all the time, I might as well just not worry about it. It's kind of like that same mindset where I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They try to do too much at the same time, or restrict too much, so it's not sustainable, rather than figuring out a way that is just, good on average, rather than just being occasionally super great. So it's that same mindset, I think, that it has to be perfect, or it's not worth it.
Interesting. So it sounded like, so you said you took a class on nutrition, correct? That's kind of
Yes.
okay. I'm curious, is that because, forgive me for my lack of knowledge here, like there's recovery, like stretching, things like that. Did you already have a routine for that, or was that something that came later on? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think back then there was a lot of resources out for like how to train correctly, but not so much about how to fuel for that and making sure you could recover in terms of like your nutrition. So that's why I felt for me that was like the missing piece. I guess I also had like good amount of experience and background from my gymnastics. So maybe felt like I had that stuff more dialed in, but just had no clue with my nutrition. And then the first one I took was the precision nutrition back then, which was really great and general. And then I've later on taken from you guys know Dr. Lane Norton. He also goes by BioLane. He's very like evidence-based. He has some online courses too. So I've taken his 2 certifications as well, which are really great too. I highly recommend those if anyone wants to get into that, just to kind of continue my education in that space. Yeah.
That's interesting. So where you're saying it's better to have a slightly better diet all the time than it is to have a really good diet some of the time. Where do you normally start people off with that?
The most common thing when I start with a nutrition client is that most people are not eating enough protein, but overeating like fat, just because that way they're eating like too many calories overall. And those are usually the 2 parameters that like we try to adjust first, and also the ones that are most challenging for most people. Yeah. So, and then obviously also quality of food. So just getting that. But I think with that, a lot of people also have that mindset of like, okay, all or nothing, where I really don't believe in like overly restricting or completely limiting anything. When I work with a client, we work a lot of like incorporating the things that they enjoy, like making sure that what we're doing and implementing also works with their family life. You know, they're not cooking separate meals for themselves because, you know, like we can maybe do that for a week or 2, but it doesn't work in a family with 3 kids and sports and all that. And if they just want to hardcore cut out something that they really enjoy eating or something that they do as a family, you know, I try to really steer people away from that and find some sort of balance so you can keep like having the things that you enjoy, because overall that's going to make you more successful in the long run. So yeah.
That's interesting. So talking about increasing the quality of the intake of food, what does that entail? Do you recommend supplements, or how do those tie in?
Yeah, so often when it comes to, for example, protein, we talk a lot about finding, you know, whole food protein sources first of all. So like lean meats, fish, and I recommend like eating a lot of like low-fat Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, things like that. Sorry, my kids are
Oh,
being
good.
super loud.
Good.
And then using a protein supplement is great for like driving up your overall intake, just not overdoing it, because the backside is that like most of those things are, if we're talking about a protein shake, it's liquid, so it just won't fill you up the same way as like, say you get 25 or 30 grams of protein from your shake versus eating like 5 ounces of chicken breast. It just fills you up different. So in that way, eating more of it from whole food sources will probably help you stay more on track, because you're gonna be more satiated and full throughout the day. But using it, if it's generally a problem of like just always being like those 30 grams of protein short every day, and you just don't feel like you can eat more, like then it's a great strategy to like get more protein in without so much volume of food. So in that way, those types of supplements are great.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. There's been plenty of times when, I get done the workout, I have a protein shake, and I'm like, that is just not enough. I need something else.
Yeah.
It's straight down the chute.
Yeah. A couple of the questions in there. Yeah.
For the nutrition, like one of the questions probably that we were thinking about was about like timing of further nutrition, because for example, like we do jiu-jitsu, like we do tournaments, we do like different matches. So you in CrossFit, you have like different heats, the different competition. How do you time nutrition in events like that, like what you eat at a certain time throughout those events?
Yeah. So I think the timing aspect of food in general is also one of the things that we maybe focus a little bit too much on if we're talking about like, like the analogy of like rocks versus pebbles. It doesn't really make sense to worry about that if the rocks are not in place. Like, first of all, I would say, are you getting enough or adequate amount of calories per day for like your demands, just overall, like every training day, like any day? Okay, your breakdown of macronutrients, is that appropriate for you? Are we checking all those boxes? Are you sleeping enough? Are you drinking enough water? Like, how's everything, Then, if everything is dialed in, then maybe it makes sense to worry about the specific timing of what you're consuming. I think oftentimes on like competition days, in my experience, a lot of people even struggle with getting enough food because maybe of nerves and like the timing of events. Like, very generally, I don't know exactly with jiu-jitsu competitions, like how far are the matches like or the fights spaced out? How much time do you have in between?
That it can vary quite a bit. I mean,
Okay.
some brackets, I mean, you might get 10 minutes in between. Others, you might get a couple hours. So,
Yeah. So then if you only have like 10 minutes or even up to 30 minutes, I would just try to get some carbohydrates in, like just in snack form. And again, it's also very individual how you feel training on an empty stomach versus like being more full. But then if you have hours in between your fights, I would try to get a more like regular full meal in that way. Yeah.
I was also somebody that cut weight and I have an hour between the weigh-in and their match, the first match.
And they have been cutting weight.
Yes.
I mean, you would probably want to get some liquids in and maybe also some nutrition from that. So I don't have a lot of experience with that. And if it's like a hardcore cut, I would definitely say liquids because then you're probably going to be dehydrated and then some form of liquid carbs. So it's like quickly absorbed and maybe also some liquid protein to kind of help you feel full and have that in your system too. Yeah. But yeah, I have not. I've helped people cut for like Olympic weightlifting competitions mostly where the timing is much different and we try to do it like much more in advance so it's a much more sustainable weight loss, not like a hardcore cut, no water cuts because they also need to feel great when they're performing. Well, the same for a fighter, but I know that they do a lot more extreme cuts in your sport.
So some of those guys are nuts.
Yeah. But don't they typically have like a day or so to recover, or is it only when it's like UFC, like bigger events?
BJJF is the same day.
Really?
yeah.
Yes, I think ABGF, you have to weigh in with your gi, your uniform, you have to get weighed in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that even adds like what, 5 pounds or something like that?
Probably, yeah, around there, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, but
Yeah.
meanwhile, everybody else is juicing so I don't know what the weighing for. They're making it different. What's it really making it fair for?
No, yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I also was doing that because that's one thing, like in wrestling when I was in college, that's one thing that we, like, especially smaller guys, because the brackets start earlier than anybody, because the heavyweight has like 2 hours for even, like, he doesn't even have to cut weight. But
Yeah.
that 125-pounder, he's the first guy that goes wrestling. So he has an hour between weighing in. He has the most percentage of body weight to cut because 5 pounds for 125 and 5 pounds for 197 is big difference. And
Uh-huh.
he has to replenish and he has to warm up within the hour.
Yeah. No
So
way.
like, so it's hard. He may like he spent 3 hours a night before trying to cut weight. Some of them they have sometimes, for example, nationals is 3 days weigh in. So you weigh in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
So like
Yeah.
you only get like one day, you 1 pound allowance,
Okay.
but you still have to make weight though. So I was wondering
Yeah.
how do you do that, like weighing every day? to replenish your
Yeah.
storage for the performance that day, because our coaches always say the first match is always gonna be the toughest match.
Yeah. Oh, I believe that. Yeah. But what they should do is just not do such a drastic cut right before and just try to be closer to your like weight limit. But I guess I
So
see also like there is where's your optimal like training weight, and then I can understand that there's a benefit to being much lighter as well. So it makes sense, but it's very hard on the body too.
yeah, there's a point of diminishing return always
Yeah.
with your body is, because the older you are, for example, a freshman, it's okay for him to cut weight to a certain extent because he's younger.
Yeah.
But for now, that because of COVID, some wrestlers wrestle up to 6th year in college. That guy's in his 6th year. He probably shouldn't be wrestling 125. Try and make that weight. Should probably go up, because the older you get, the harder it's going to be for you to make that weight.
Oh yeah, and probably yeah, and also because you've done it multiple times too. So depending on how they do it, there has been some studies that show when you go into a caloric deficit, your body will try to adjust for that. So it'll slow down your metabolism. You'll like fidget less. You'll automatically try anything it can to try to hold on and like just lower your energy demands. So then when you're done with that phase, and then say he's done with his match and he goes back to now eating normal, then you go back up to your weight, but now your maintenance calories is lower because your body like lowered those demands. Then he goes into that weight loss phase again. And then if every time it gets like kind of the demands, the caloric deficit that he has to meet to continue to hit that lower weight, in theory would go down, right? So it makes sense that after so much time of doing that cut, it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, that's probably why a lot of like fighters, they go, the older they get, they go higher weight classes, because make it
Yeah.
harder on them.
Yeah. I mean, or yeah, maybe they're also building a bit more muscle. So in that way, it's also harder to get
Sure.
that low. Yeah. Yeah.
Could be wrong on this, Irving, but feel free to correct me if I am. Didn't some places go to the day of weigh-ins to try to limit the amount of weight they were cutting?
For events
Yeah, I thought
of
that was a theory for
jiu-jitsu or
wrestling.
for wrestling,
Yeah, I thought so. I don't know.
some of them they went away from it.
I thought so. I thought some places had day before previously, and then are moving to the day of weigh-ins to try to limit the amount of weight cutting.
I know they did it the opposite way. Super 32
Okay.
this year, they did it they usually do it the day off. The reason they're doing it the day before is because they have too many kids in the tournament. So it's hard for them to weigh in all those kids and run the tournament the same day. Instead of starting that tournament at 10 in the morning, they have to start like noon or later, because still have to weigh in kids. And usually who's checking weights are the referees that run in the tournament. So it's hard. So
Okay.
that's what's weigh in the day before. Also, it's healthier too for the kids to
Yeah.
recover the day before.
Yeah. I've also heard the argument that there should just be more weight classes, that the ranges are just too big.
Yes, in the Olympics, it is too big. The
Yeah.
world, for some reason, the Olympics weight are different than United World Wrestling, because our World Wrestling has 10 weight classes, but Olympics only has 6 weight classes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. Just that would probably help people keep a longer and healthier career if they didn't have to do such a drastic cut every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's another question do you have? In regards of, we had a question about, in regards of, with the supplements, we covered that one. Do you have like a specifically like supplements as far as like to cover, rather than macronutrients, but micronutrients, as far as like iron or like zinc or things like that? Because I remember like macros usually where you look like a certain way, but micronutrients usually how you feel a certain way.
Yeah. The ones that I usually recommend that most people are low on is vitamin D. I usually recommend most people to do creatine too, because it's one of the most researched and supported supplements out there. And a lot of my clients have goals of building more muscle, so it's certainly going to help with that. And then fish oil, those are usually the ones that I recommend. And then most people do like a multivitamin or something like that to cover the rest. Other than that, it's going to be like very specific to the individual, and it's kind of like outside of my scope of practice to recommend like those specific things. It's more like a thing that they have to consult with their doctor. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because it's usually that's another thing, like not a people take in consideration of first like macronutrients, because things that they neglect, but they help them like recover at the same time. For example, like you say, like fish oil help for because we usually need that for our joints because we are always aching.
Yeah. Yeah. That helps. I mean, that helps me for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
You have or did you have like a pre and post workout nutrition plan? Like, was there certain foods that you wanted to eat before you got into a hard workout, specific things after? Did you have that planned out? Or
Yeah, so for me, I always used to have like a full meal balanced with like a protein, carbs, and fats and veggies. And that would be like about 90 minutes before I started moving around for my training session. And then afterwards, I had at least 50 grams of liquid carbs and then about 30 grams of protein right after. Sometimes if it was a longer session, I would start sipping on my carbs towards the end of my session. But yeah, that used to be my routine. And that worked well for me. But I know other people who don't like having a meal, like even 90 minutes might be close for them to have a full meal close to the training session, or some can even do it closer. I think whatever you do pre-workout is something you have to, it's like trial and error, see what works for you, and what you like. Yeah.
that makes a lot of
Now I
sense.
focus more on like what I just do overall on a daily basis, because I'm not really training for a certain performance. It's more aesthetics and longevity.
Definitely, that makes a lot of sense. I remember at the end of college, I was training. I had more time then, and I was able to train a few hours a day. And I remember specifically, if I ate too close, I would be great for the first half, and then the second half, my energy would just tank. And it was
Yeah.
strange because it was almost, I felt better going in on an empty stomach. Like
Yeah.
energy-wise, at least I was the same the whole time. It was not a spike and then a crash.
Yeah.
Granted, I think the food I was intaking was not the best for me, but
No, maybe that had something to do with it
yeah.
too. Like intra-workout nutrition is something to play around with too. That's why if my sessions were longer, I started like sipping on my carbs just to kind of keep the energy a little bit higher. And if they were really, really long, we would take a break and eat a snack or something like that to like keep going. Yeah.
For the training sessions, and also like, how soon do you like eat breakfast? Like, because some people eat like breakfast as soon as they get up, others don't eat breakfast at all. What's your thought on?
Yeah, so what I do right now, because I coach most mornings at 5 a.m., either private training clients or classes. So I usually don't eat before that. I just have my coffee, and then I just drink some branched chain amino acids throughout my 2 or 3 hours of coaching, because I feel like it kind of holds me over. I don't get like so hungry. And then when I come home, so around 8, I'll eat my breakfast then. That's my routine right now, just because of my work in the morning. But with fasting or time restricted eating in general, there's no magic to it. If people are losing weight because they're doing it, it's very simple. Like you're cutting out a whole meal's worth of calories. So it's a great strategy, especially if you don't prefer to track your food. It's an easy way to kind of limit your calorie intake just by eliminating one meal. The only downside is that I think in my experience, I see that for a lot of people, it's hard not to overeat then once your eating window starts, because now you're so hungry that you just want to eat everything in your kitchen. And then you don't really end up in a caloric deficit because you just overeat after. That's why I like sipping on the BCAAs throughout the morning when I don't eat, because I feel like I don't end up with that like crazy hunger. Um, I think again it's like very individual what works for you. Some people want to eat right when they get up. Some people prefer to wait a little bit. I always take it back with my clients to like, what can you sustain? Like, fine, maybe you can do the fasting for a week or two and it's great, but like, does it work for your lifestyle? Does it work with your family? Like, does the rest of your family sit down to eat breakfast together and you can't join? Then that's probably not a good setting. Like, we always talk about like, what can you do long term? Okay, that's what we're gonna practice. So that's what I would consider. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, that seems like a very real approach. I feel like I've heard a lot of people who don't preach that, who are, that trying to get you on these perfect diets that are just daunting, to be honest.
Yeah. No, and then maybe they can lose a bunch of weight, but if you don't make any real changes when you're at it, or you're so over it by the time that diet is done, that you just revert back to what you were doing before, and then you gain all the way back and probably more, because now your maintenance calories are a little bit lower because you were maybe in such a drastic caloric deficit too. So it's like many aspects of it that it's much better to do something, slow and sustainable. Yeah.
Are there any recurring things, like whenever you get a new client, are there any recurring like beliefs or teachings that, as far as nutrition goes, that people generally believe are true that you don't think are accurate?
I think there is oftentimes we have a conversation about whether or not carbs are bad, and just getting them to understand that it's not carbs, it's the overall calories, and you're okay eating carbs. Like, that's a conversation I have a lot. Then it's often about weight too, because I have them do a daily weigh-in, just to have more data, because your weight will fluctuate from day to day, and it's mostly due to water retention. So if we just have like one weigh-in a week, it can be so skewed by maybe we have a higher day or a lower day. It doesn't really tell us a lot about what your weight trend is. So that is, I think, like, at first people maybe don't like it so much because of those daily fluctuations, because it's like, man, how did I gain 2 pounds since yesterday? It's like, no, you didn't. It's just maybe you ate out, maybe you had more sodium. Are you super sore? You're probably holding more water, or like, it's a constant conversation about that. And then it turns into like, it's also empowering because you start recognizing these patterns, so you can almost anticipate what the weight is gonna be when at your weigh-in in the morning. And then it's like, oh, you kind of detach a little bit emotionally from that number, which is ultimately what I'm going for, because in the end, like, it does not matter. It's just a number, we
Right.
just need it for data. So I think those are definitely two things that we work a lot on in terms of mindset. Yeah.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah. And even for guys too, it's not just women. Like, that number on the scale, it can really bother a lot of men as well.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
getting
On a
any
bigger
bigger.
scale.
Yeah, no. Sometimes it's, they're like, they don't want it to go too low, or
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there currently any like pharmaceutical drugs that you see like a lot of like you see some people are using nowadays that you see like in nutritional they see a trend going on right now?
It would probably be the weight loss drugs like Ozempic. I think there's still like a lot of research to be done on that, and I don't know everything about it. I think there's more and more like this understanding of especially obesity, like that we need to understand it and approach it more as a disease. So in that way, I think if taking like a drug like you would for any other disease, if it can help you with that, and now you're dropping weight and you're eliminating a bunch of other issues related to obesity, then maybe it's a good thing. I think it also just has to come with like some lifestyle changes, and I don't know if it always does. So I think, and then I think a lot of people who could probably lose the weight from diet and exercising, maybe they have the means to get the drug, and it seems like an easier solution, and they do that. But if we're talking about like a 5 or 10 pound weight drop, you probably don't need it. But then there's also, I've heard the argument that, well, if you know, like if you just don't have the energy to focus on that, and then it can kind of free up time and energy you can put into other aspects of your life. Maybe that's fine, and maybe that's a good reason to use it to drop just even a little bit of weight. So I think that's probably the most talked about right now and the most popular one. I just don't know enough about it to really have a super informed opinion about it, honestly.
Yeah, I see a lot of people that are on those kind of Ozempic. I can't remember the name of the other one that people are on that they
Yeah,
are getting on. Don't know how sustainable they are because see a lot of people are losing weight. It's not just body weight; you got to see it on their face,
yeah,
how much they lose. They're also losing not just fat, but also losing muscle mass as
yes,
well. Which is like I
yeah,
don't know how what's the like all the side effects for using those drugs as well. So I don't know
yeah,
much about it.
exactly. Yeah, I feel like yeah, it probably needs more research, but that's what I've heard too, that they're losing a lot of muscle with that. But that's also, you can really avoid that in a weight loss, even with like high resistance training and high protein intake during a caloric deficit. I think the best you can get close to is like 70% fat loss and 30% muscle loss. Like you will always lose a little bit of muscle when you are losing weight, even if you are um, making like the efforts not to. So, and I don't know, since it's very large people who are probably on that drug, if it's like an appropriate ratio that they're losing each. I don't know that.
Because we don't know what their muscle mass was to begin with.
No, no.
Okay.
But then again, if it then help them not, you know, get diabetes or other like cardiovascular disease or anything like that, then it's probably good. That's probably better. So
Sure.
it's always like a trade-off, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, because those things are not cheap. Some insurance don't cover them, those drugs.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too, that it's definitely expensive. Yeah,
And
yeah.
do you have any question, Nate?
Well, I was just looking. We had the question about special diets like keto or vegan, but I guess I mean, if you have more points, glad to hear them. But I think we've kind of heard that it seems like if it's working for somebody, it's probably okay. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about it too, because you said like what are trends, and I think those are definitely some of the trends, like the carnivore, keto, all those things. Like the reason they work is because they all create like a caloric deficit in some way or another. And then I think it's great, but it also again comes down to like, can you sustain it in the long run? Because that's, I think, what we often see, that they can't really, right? They may drop a bunch of weight because they eat a carnivore diet, and maybe they even do it for like 6 months, but then maybe it didn't turn out to be great for their overall health, or maybe they just can't sustain it because it doesn't work with their family life or whatever. And then they maybe gain the weight back. So then I think it comes down to what can you consistently do? That's what you should be doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And most people cannot just hardcore like cut out foods or food groups from their life forever, because that's the only strategy to get them there. Yeah.
I feel like,
the only exception rule will be if they're like have like health issues. For example, somebody had like Crohn's disease or things like that. That would make sense, but not because of nutritional.
Yeah. And then I think when you do something like that, maybe like get your blood work done to check out how it really affects you. Because I think it also affects everyone different. Some people might thrive on a carnivore diet, and some people might not. So just because it worked for someone else might not be the best thing for you.
Yeah, I know somebody that got on a carnivore diet, losing a lot of weight, but her cholesterol was going through the roof. Like she was having heart issues and stuff like that. Yeah, probably not
No.
good idea. Somebody worked third shift, loaded on caffeine all the time, cholesterol issues. It's
Yeah.
not a good thing to be on.
No. Yeah. Then it's not good. No, I think
Eating fried eggs all the time.
I know, right? Just doesn't seem like a good idea. No. No.
It does seem like everybody that I know that has done the carnivore diet or vegetarian, any of that, they all seem to fade out after a little while. Even if it lasts months, it still seems to fade out.
They go back. Yeah.
I feel like it would be hard to not feel somewhat isolated. You go out to eat with people and you can only have the certain things. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any carnivore?
Yeah.
Probably.
Better of bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't question because we have other ones that we have, but you seem like you cover as well. They have for the nutrition that you spoke about, like supplements. You said mostly you wanna supplement. You just wanna supplement when you wanna meet those macros when you don't have like time restricted in your diet later on the days.
What, sir?
You say you want to mainly hit your macros with whole foods, but you supplement. You say you want to just whenever you are running, where you don't have enough time during the days, or some of the days where you're not able to get it, just meet your goals.
Yeah, if you're talking about like a protein supplement or something, I think like having a daily protein shake is fine. But if it all of a sudden becomes like your sole source of protein and you're struggling to stick to your macros, then it's probably because you're getting too many calories from like liquid source. So that's why it's like a good strategy, but not if you're struggling to stick to it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know a lot of protein supplements are clean. A lot of them still have a lot of sugars and all this stuff behind it.
Yeah. I mean, you can get clean ones, and whey protein, for example, is like super high quality protein. So it's great to use as a supplement to get your protein intake higher. You should just eat it from like whole foods too, because it will help you keep more full as well. And you'll get like the full palette of amino acids. Yeah. Yes.
I was surprised at one time I was trying to lose weight, and then I was in a diet. I don't know if you heard Dolce diet. I was eating more than I was used to eating. I was like, how am I supposed to eat all this food? I was still more weight, but I was eating more food than I used to eating. So
Yeah. Was it more because of the volume, or was it more in terms of calories too, you think?
more volume. So I
Yeah.
like a lot of berries, like coconut water, like
Yeah.
vegetables, spinach, peppers,
Yeah.
and things like that. That's a lot of stuff.
I think that's very normal too, because you probably came from eating more energy dense foods. So then all of a sudden switching to more whole foods, it just the volume is more. So that's something I hear from my clients a lot too. Like, oh, it feels like a lot of food, or it feels like I'm eating more than I used to, but it's just different sources and not so energy dense. And maybe it feels like more on some days, but a lot of people are also very inconsistent. So they'll have days where maybe they're busy eating a little bit less. Then you go out on the weekends and you eat twice as much. So if we look at your food intake as like a weekly budget, you're probably well above your average, or like your maintenance on an average. You just have some days that are very low and some days that are very high. And now all of a sudden I put you on a diet where we're tracking every day. We're just going for maintenance, but you're just being very consistent. And so it maybe feels like you're eating more than you used to. Yeah.
And you can feel the difference energy wise as well. You feel
Oh, yeah.
lethargic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But and then another thing is then when you then maybe have some of those days again, even if we are tracking and we are doing really good and we're working on a diet together, you may have days that don't go as planned. And then I think it's just a matter of like getting back on track and being okay. I think that's another thing that can hold people back or throw them completely off, is if you feel like you have an off day and now everything is lost, like now I ruined everything. No, you did not. Just get back on track. It's again like look at the big picture, like you just focus on consistency, get back on track. So that's another thing that I talk to my clients a lot about. Because life is gonna happen. It's not just gonna be perfect all the time. So you have to allow yourself to get a little bit off track, but make sure you get back on again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. So, because being a perfectionist, sometimes like, because it feels like by getting off the track, it feels like everything that you've done before is just like being thrown away. And then you have to like go back from the beginning, but not necessarily. Take a little bit step to the left, just to get back on,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get back.
Yeah. Or you can we sometimes try to set boundaries to that. So especially weekends are hard, right? Because they're not as routine and you can easily get a little bit more off track. So with my clients, we often talk about, okay, so if you go out to eat Saturday night, maybe you have some drinks and stuff, that just means the next meal being Sunday morning, we're back on track. We cannot have more than one meal back to back. That's like off. So it's just a way to quickly adjust, because I think when we're on our own and we do it, like you have maybe one bad meal and then it turns into one bad weekend, and then then all of a sudden it's one bad week too, and then 3 months and now we're still not back on track because you just kept the ball rolling, right? So it's about just getting back, and not just because it's easier said than done sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
That is funny. I mean, I am by no means a personal trainer or anything like that, but I have had people ask me, like in jiu-jitsu class, like, I had a guy a couple weeks ago now, he's told me, oh, I don't work out at all, but do you recommend working out for jiu-jitsu? And I told him, like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, you don't really, if you don't work out at all right now, I told him not to overcomplicate it. Just get to the gym and work out. Like, just do something. You'll
Yeah.
notice an improvement.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I tend to overcomplicate things and then I never get started on it.
Oh,
I prefer to just go out there, do it a little bit, and then work into it.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's very normal for both like training and nutrition. Like sometimes I'll have clients who have maybe tried an approach on their own, and it's always like changing 10 different parameters at one time, and everything has to be perfect, and they do it for a week or a month, and then they can't do it. So it's like one thing at a time, like, and again, like what is sustainable. And the same with training. Like if he's not training at all outside of jiu-jitsu, and maybe he sets a goal of now I have to do it 5 days a week. No,
Yeah.
just how about we just do 1 or 2 or, I think that's very, very normal that we want to overdo it and overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Because it's also what we see on social media a lot.
Immediate gratification.
Huh?
Immediate gratification.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely also, I think, when I work with people, they're surprised by how long a weight loss generally it is probably going to take much longer than you think, if you want to do it the right way.
That 30-second reel that you see on Instagram is 5 year long.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's just real. And there's going to be up and downs, like you said. And then just those peak and valleys. Just try to make sure, try to be constant, those peak and valleys, trying to keep him as constant as you can. Just don't try to let him get you too down.
Exactly.
Don't be climbing too high. Try to stay constant.
Yeah, for sure.
That covered a lot of stuff today. That's pretty good. Running low on questions, but it was good.
Yeah. I hope it's useful. I've only dabbled a little bit in jiu-jitsu, but not much.
You have
I
tried
have
it?
one stripe.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
What's more strong than anybody else?
Exactly.
Yeah. It is fun though.
I don't know. For me, it's kind of well, here it is. Once you get into it, it's fun to work out for me, but it takes a little bit. Jiu-jitsu is kind of like it's a workout, it's fun, it's community, it's a lot of things all at once, and I kind of like that,
Yeah.
kind of a workout with more of an objective than moving something around,
Oh,
To
yeah.
me,
that.
I love that.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. And it's very useful too, right? I mean,
Thankfully, I
like
haven't had to use it, but
I know, but you have the tools if you do need it. Yeah.
You were saying you'd rather be the guardian in the war. You'd rather be the warrior in the guardian than the guardian in the war.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Do you have anything to promote, Stine?
I mean, if people want to, they can follow me on Instagram. I'm at stinepinilla.fit. And then I have a website, Stine Pinilla Coaching, for online training programs and nutrition coaching. If you're not local in Colorado, we can work together that way. If you are local in Colorado, we can train at the gym together.
All right. Thank you so much. It's really, honestly, it's very informative. I personally, I don't have a ton of experience with any of this, so it's very interesting to hear somebody who's done some research.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.